started cleaning up this front end here, and I got my new brake brackets, and I spun this. It looks pretty good, but if you look right down inside here, right there on a rotor, it's touching, and where it's touching is right there at the bottom of that lower control arm. I tried moving them around with a crowbar. They don't seem to be moving, the ball joints. But what happens once it starts being jacked up, maybe 3 inches, this ball joint, when it rotates out, as this comes up, lets that lower control arm touch the rotor. So, don't know what this is. They all look about the same amount of rust. I've got bigger control arms out there, but I don't think they're going to fit this. They're like an inch wider. I thought that maybe this would be time to get the 11-inch rotors, replace the ball joints. I don't know what's going on. I can't find any play in it. Of course, I don't have it up on a front end rack and all the stuff to chain it down and check with. This bottom ball joint, it's riveted just like the top ones. I know that's how you get them out. Well, you got to take that control arm completely out, drill it out. You could probably do it while it's still on the car, and then bolt the new U-joint in. Ball joint. But what I'm going to try to do is pull this rotor and everything off of here. It'll give me a chance to get in there and clean it up a little bit, and just take a grinder. First, I'm just going to try to hammer the edge of that control arm down, and it's got to be all the way around, because that's right in a straight ahead position now. It may only hit right there. It might be bent. I really can't get under it to see, but I know I can heat that up and bend that lip over so it misses the brake. And the bearings feel good, they're smooth. It's just that when it comes up out of this all the way down position, it rotates in and hits that brake. I don't know. I'll eventually have to take these bolts off, of course. Yeah, I tightened up the tie rod end here. It was loose, and all of a sudden the wheel quit turning, and so I got to checking, and it's tight now. If it's up in the driving position with that tie rod end loose, it doesn't drag. But the minute you put pressure on that tie rod in, it's pulling it in and dragging. Of course, I don't really have the steering good enough to turn it left to right. I could, but I'm gonna have to pull this off anyway. So here's the next project. Sort this mess out. Put in my brackets. Luckily, you know, they fit on there fine. I'll have to get some kind of a bolt here to go through this mess. Looks like that's the right one. Might be a little long. I'm not sure how any of this is going to go. Looks like it screws into here. This bolt's bent for some reason. I noticed taking it out, it was, no, maybe not. Anyway, that's what I got to do. I'll clean up all this stuff, take it apart, rust converter it real good, and pound that lip in. It's going to be some pretty good pounding. That's pretty heavy stamped metal, but I don't have to get very much, just have to get enough to clear that rotor. Don't have my brake pads yet, so I can't tell if they're going to work. I may be just a waste of time and have to buy 11-inch rotors. You know, who knows, I might have to get new steering drop spindles, and it is kind of high in the front, so I think a 1-inch drop spindle would help this thing a lot. I did play around there with that oil pan. You know, I've only got it about 6-7 inches off the ground, so I don't really want to kill that by dropping the front end more. Anyway, trials and tribulations. Like and subscribe, guys, and we'll see you next video. Well, I rust converted this front end here. Obviously it's kind of hard to get up in there, but what I was able to do is put the brush up in there and then hit it with air and blew the stuff up into where I couldn't reach. I got it looking pretty good. I beat this thing with a hammer just a little bit. It just took a few whacks to bend that edge over, and it's clearing my drum. I also just put a little this converter on here. Just to seal it. The drum looks all right. But I didn't put any on the surface, of course. You can see right here where it was dragging. Hey, buddy. Dog wants to play. But anyway, this is gonna look a lot better than it did. And come on, go on. So that old red thing there, I'm just gonna spray paint that black just to get rid of it more than anything. I didn't put any of this on the threads, but really there's never going to be any adjusting way back here. Might as well just get this all done while I'm at it. Anyway, that looks pretty good. The bearings looked good. I'll clean it all up. Go on. Clean it all up real good and see if I can get these brakes on it. Well, I forgot something here and opened a new can of worms. And this is the control arm. I got this new one. I didn't know I had any, or I thought I only had one. So anyway, I bought this, and then later on I found I had 3 more of them, old rusty ones. You can see them laying there. But the problem is that these 2 bowl holes don't really line up. They're off about a quarter of an inch. You can see this one's pretty straight, and this front one is off a little. Anyway, I can bore a hole, but the problem is I didn't account for any for anything there when I put the motor mount in. Now I've got that clamped on there, which like I said, I can figure out how to get some bolts in that. Now this is lowered all the way. That's ride height. And I'm going to jack it up just to see what. See, it really don't look like it's moving very much. I mean, it's got to be moving some. But really not much. I've got the old bushings here on the rusty one. I can buy new bushings, that's no big deal. And I can use the hardware there. I can use that stuff. But I was wondering what it's doing, moving back and forth. Yeah, it is moving at a little bit of an angle from up to down. I could put I saw some kits to put like a control joint in there and get away from this that stock setup. So it looks like it's really only just rotating and changing the angle a little as this goes up and down. So I'll have to make some kind of a bracket and a mount. The problem is, I don't know where it goes or the geometry of it. I guess I can just mount it there, it's not going to move at all with the front end turning. This is probably good enough to turn this thing. Yeah, it's not moving at all with the when the wheels turn. That would change my caster and camber, or at least caster, moving back and forth in the frame. But I think that's just supposed to keep that lower control arm from going back when you hit a bump. And it's got some little brackets on the original down there. That's for the sway bar. And I'm probably not going to be using that. But it looks like I've got enough room in there to, I got about 2 or 3 inches. From where that bar is up to the frame, so I can put a plate across the frame and make some brackets, bore a big hole in it that'll fit that bar. Like I said, the problem is I don't know where it's supposed to go. I put the other one over here and it's not fitting holes either. These holes in this lower control arms are just too small. And it looks like those bolts are pressed into the bar itself. We got some little teeth on them. I'm not particularly worried about that. I can get something in there that'll hold it. Mounting this though is a problem. I guess I can try to take that old rusty one apart, dig them bushings out, clean them up, and see where this thing is going and kind of get an idea what kind of bracket I need. But this is going to take all day. Not much use of me trying to continue with my brakes here whenever the strut rod's bad. Anyway, that whole rusty front end turned out pretty good with that rust converter on it. It's dry, and I painted that chalk tower there black. So anyway, I'm going to try a little measuring, from the frame here at ride height, and when it's fully compressed, and then jack it up and see how much distance I got in here. Looks like I missed a little bit of my red. That's because it was jacked up. Anyway, It's not going to be right, but all I can do is line it up best I can, put me some good bolts in it, measure everything, and just make a bracket to these rubber things don't look too bad. They're rusty, but I think I can figure out something from that. Press on with this problem. Well, I fooled around a couple hours and finally made a bracket for my stabilizer bar. I took a plasma cutter and just opened the holes up here in the lower control arm, so I could go ahead and use one of the stock things. I couldn't get the bolts. Well, I couldn't get big bolts in it, and so it would loose. So I decided to go with one of these old rusty ones that already had the good bolts in it. And I put it in there, fooled around, and managed to get it laid out, tacked it together, pulled it out, and welded it. And that's what it looks like. Let me put it in, I'll show you. Well, there it is, basically. I happen to have a piece of pipe that was pretty close to this diameter, and my washers and squisher stuff will fit in here. With it bolted on, or when this is welded, I can still actually get it off. Basically, it just takes a little wiggling, and I can get it out. So when I first put it in, I thought, oh man, I'll never, once I weld it in, I'm done. But it actually goes in pretty good. This is not something that's going to come out a lot anyway. So that's where it's going to get welded. I gotta pull this bracket off of here and mark it and cut it here, and then I can weld this up to the frame here. So I think I'll be good to go. That's pretty strong, and I don't know, maybe I ought to, put these rubbers on here real tight, bolt it up before I weld that thing on. But I'm pretty sure that what little flexing and stuff I got in here will be taken up by the rubber. So it turned out that I was able to miss my motor mount, and I've got the original bolts on it, so I think this thing will work out good enough. And again, once I make one of them, you know, it's pretty easy to take a piece of angle iron and cut a piece of pipe, make another one. Well, I just welded a little gusset on this thing. Oh, it's still hot. Threw some paint on it. I didn't paint it here on the back because that's where I'm going to weld it. I threw some paint on this. I had already got all the rust off of it, and a little bit on those two washers. I'll let this dry while it cools off, and then I'll bolt it all together, get it tight, clamp it in and weld it to the frame, and that'll be this side done. And then I have to do the same thing to the other side. I finally cut that big bolt off that screwed me up, and started cutting that bracket off there with a plasma cutter. So just have to make one more for over there. Like I say, it shouldn't be too hard now that I made the one. I know exactly what I need to do. Probably 80% of the time was trying different pieces and trying to see what I could put in here that was going to be strong enough. I'm pretty sure that's going to be strong enough now. The only thing that I'm worried about is that piece of pipe there that holds the rubber, but it's awfully strong. That's pretty good pipe, and I'm just assuming that the weight on it and where it's going to bolt in is the caster's right, and I'm sure I got some kind of adjustment up here on it. Makes no difference. If it's not right, I'll have to cut it off, do something else. Well, there it is. Got my old rubbers on it, and I put some spacers on it to make sure that it was squished good. It's flexing a little as the car goes up, flexing as the car goes down. I've got it tightened up pretty tight in here. I welded it real good. Well, it's still a little warm, but I gooped that around there pretty good. Plenty good for this thing. I'll clean that up a little bit, but I got good penetration into that frame all the way around. It's welded good on 3 sides, and one corner is up against the motor mount, and that's welded up the side of the frame. So it was a pretty good day's work. I never did get to the brake, which is what I was after to start with, but it looks right. It looks like it's about 45-degree angle. I don't know what it's supposed to be. I don't know how much this adjustment there is in this top here. I don't know if that's even considered a caster angle. It don't look like it. I think that's just to control the lower control arm. As far as I can tell, the ball joints just a little back of the top one's just a little back of the bottom one. I think that would give me a backwards caster. I don't know. I haven't really studied on how to change this. I'm pretty sure you just unbolt these two bolts here and slide this bar this way, and that changes your caster. And the camber, of course, is in and out. Really looks like a pretty simple front end. I don't think there's anything in the bottom to adjust. It looks like it's only can be adjusted up here on top. Don't know. You know, the camber looks kind of good. It's hard to tell because that wheel's on there crooked. That wheel don't quite fit. So anyway, there's a part of the saga that I wasn't planning on. My strut bar brace. I did know I had to do that earlier. I completely forgot about it. Would have been a good time to do it with the mounts. Kind of lucked out. I don't know where that other mount is, but I'm sure it's in straight across. Yeah, doesn't make any difference. Wherever it's at, I can make a bracket to put that bar on and we'll be good to go. Well, I'll jack it up here and see what I can do about the brakes now. Well, now I see why everybody's squawking about 11-inch rotors. These things are just barely touching. In fact, if I tighten them up a little bit, you can see the rotor's moving. That's because it's pressing on it. So the rotor itself is not touching the caliper body that I can tell, but they are hitting the pins just a little, not much. That's almost tight right there. I can move it. What I was thinking about doing is going there and putting them in the lathe and just taking like 10 thousandths off of this bolt, leave the end, you know, 1/2 inch on the end, and just past the threads. I take 15-20 thousandths out and see if that's going to clear. I hope it is. It's, you know, I can tell it's not touching right there. but it might when it gets tightened up, it might pull that bracket down in there and touch it. I don't want to take a lot off of these bolts because it'll make the brakes sloppy, but a few thousand shouldn't hurt it. And that way they'll clear the rotor. And once I get the rotor cleared, I can tighten them up, and then I can tell if it's going to interfere with this. If it hits the caliper, that's no big deal. I can just grind a little of that out. Anyway, I'll put this in the lathe and machine it a little, see what happens. Well, that's done. I turned this little shaft down here 20 thousandths. It wasn't working, so what I did was put a washer in here. Brought this way, it's clear and good. And I put the little shaft that I had machined, you can see right there where it starts, in the bottom. And it was still dragging. So I just took the little Chrysler disc and a piece of pipe, put on the axle heel, just got it rotating and ground it off, and you hear it still hitting a little bit. Really not that bad, just barely touches. Might make some noise. I'll go at it again, but that's workable. And both of these are in good and tight. Well, I thought they were. Tight enough for brakes. Yeah, see, I tightened that one up and I wound up getting a little more drag in it. So I got some more tighten. Whoa, I wonder if it just stripped. Might have. I'll be damned. Something happened. It's definitely just turning now. Well, there's order another bolt. As soon as it's stripped, it quit dragging. So I think as long as it's just holding, just has to keep them coming out. Probably that would don't know why it stripped. I wasn't pulling on it that tight. Well, now that I know what the bolt looks like, I can make another one. Or whatever, just buy another one. But anyway, there's the brakes going, and this part at least is a kind of a done deal. I wanted to try to get my brake line run to this one cylinder, Doesn't really make any difference, I guess. I could have used a couple pieces of metal or something in there for brake shoes. I'm kind of curious though what stripped there, whether it was a bolt or the brake. I'm going to pull that out and look. Well, I pulled the bolt out. It looked fine. I think it's just probably a little cheap bracket. They don't look threaded very well. Anyway, that's easy enough to fix. I can just put some JB weld in it, clean it good, fill it full of JB weld, screw a bolt in that's been dipped in WD-40. I'm not particularly worried about that, or I could just drill a hole in it and put a pin in it. All it's got to do is just be tight enough not to come out. I'll take a look at that later. But for practical purposes, here's Mr. Brake. I could probably clean it up good with a sanding disc now that it turns well. I don't think I'm going to bother. I think that's good enough. Now I just have to figure out how to got my rubber lines here. So one goes here, and then I'm gonna have to make some kind of bracket here. And then run my line into that. No big deal. I think I got a washer that's that big. I'll just make myself a bracket there. Awfully big old thing there. It's probably why they cost so much. They weren't cheap. Anyway, Mr. Brakes are coming along. So I think this is quite a bit of stuff for one video. I'll get it up and loaded. Like and subscribe, guys. If you like it, it helps the YouTube stats. Gets more views. Appreciate you. We'll see you later.